What happens when you leave everything familiar behind and bet on yourself before you even know exactly how it's going to work out? Welcome back to Leading Our Own Way. I hope you've had all a great weekend, a great week since we last seen you last week. Welcome back. It's amazing. We've got another amazing guest. I'm joined this week on Leading Our Way by the amazing Yining Wang, all the way from Hong Kong. Actually, Causeway Bay. We sat in the seat where I've been, stayed in a fancy hotel in Causeway back in the day, and we found out we've actually played on the same courts. How unbelievable is that? I love how the world brings us all together. Yining Wang, his journey takes us from Sweden to Hong Kong, from a basketball first mindset to building a life shaped by clarity, purpose, and entrepreneurship. And it's not just theory. Yining's lived the pressure, the uncertainty, the big leaps, all the way through to building in business at the highest level. Here in part one, we unpack the inner game, mental health awareness, self-reflection, and the moments that force you to grow, especially when you're chasing big goals. If you've ever felt felt stuck between, who you were and who you're becoming, I guess, I think this is a good chat for you to listen to. Before we dive in, though, make sure you follow our or subscribe, depending on which channel you're listening on. And if something hits home with you today from this conversation, please share this episode with a mate or a family member who needs it. Let's walk this road together. Anyway, here's Yining on Leading Our Own Way for part one. Part two will come soon. Here we go. Here's Yining and myself. Welcome to Leading Our Own Way. I'm your host, Andrew White, and this is the podcast that unveils captivating narratives of resilience and personal triumph. This podcast is for anyone seeking inspiration and insights on overcoming life's challenges. Follow and subscribe, and then we can lead together forever. Before we dive in, I want to give a big, massive shout out to our now new proud sponsor, Eshu Skincare, a brand that truly aligns with Leading Our Own Way. This Australian-born company is dedicated to keeping skincare simple, effective, and straightforward. They've made waves in the US, even landed in Macy's and over 300 stores, and now they're back with a renewed focus on healthy skin and real results. If you want authentic skincare that fits your lifestyle, check them out in the show notes. Thanks to Eshu Skincare for supporting real stories and mental fitness on Leading Our Own Way. And if you're interested in sponsoring like Eshu Skincare, drop us a message. We'd love to connect. Yining Wang, welcome to Leading Our Own Way. How are you doing today, brother?
Thank you. Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Doing great. All the way from Hong Kong. How is Hong Kong today?
Well, I have to say Hong Kong is actually quite nice around this time of the year because, as you know, my background, I grew up in Sweden. So right now, as we can have sun and around 20 degrees Celsius in February is amazing. Right, so I can't complain.
Good, nice. I spent some time. We discussed in our pre-chat last month. I spent some time in good old Causeway Bay in Hong Kong over there, and I believe that's one of the places. Well, that's where you are right now, isn't it?
Yeah,
Causeway Bay.
Exactly, right in the middle. Causeway Bay, Lee Gardens. So it's exactly where a lot of traffic. A big commercial area right now. So yeah, exactly where I am right now.
Yeah. One of me and my best friend stayed in a hotel there. We had a rooftop pool, and I remember the basketball courts outside on the opposite side, and that's how we connected. We found out even just through that we both have a love for the game of basketball too, but even though that wasn't our original connection.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I think is so interesting and so universal is that we can connect with people across the world in different languages. And also like sports, basketball, it's actually just another medium to connect that we feel something we have shared, like passionate about. So yeah, I'm a big basketball fan and player back in the day. So yeah, Andrew, let me know. I'll lace up my shoes.
You can come and fill in on a Monday night over here in Melbourne with my team.
Sounds great.
Looking forward to it. Hong Kong was one of my first experiences. I've been to many hot countries, but before the age of 24, when I went traveling the world with my good friend back in the UK. But Hong Kong was one of those first places where I'd really felt the humidity Like it
Oh.
hit me like a ton of bricks. I would just run into McDonald's just to hit the aircon, and when you come out, it literally hits you like I shouldn't say literally, it figuratively hits me like a brick wall. That sudden heat, that sudden humidity, boom, insane.
Well, yeah, I know because I'm not originally from here, so when I moved to Hong Kong initially from Sweden, it's like wow, it is really really hot. You get so you're so sweaty, you cannot. Literally, you cannot really wear a jacket, a suit, outside. So everything is super air conditioned. But there is some pros with that. So the good thing about the humidity is that it keeps your skin very good, in good shape. So
Ah,
that's a small life hack. And that's number one. And number two is that we have summer almost all year around. So from being in the cold, we have -10, -20 during the winter. So I do not complain. I cannot complain of the hot. Like I don't complain of the weather. I don't. I've had much worse, so I never complain.
that's why you're looking so fresh, because you go and put your skin in the humidity, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Longevity. That's good. That's good.
Love it, love it. How long have you been living in Hong Kong then?
Yeah, it's actually coming up to 12 years now this year, So I moved to Hong Kong back in 2014 September, so now 26. So like time flies. So
Yeah.
but still, like for me, since I'm Swedish Chinese background, so I actually have no real, heritage from Hong Kong, even though it's hard to say from the parents. But so I'm still a little bit, like an Englishman in New York type of feeling.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you, mate.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I hear you. Living in Australia, in a cold country of England, and to Australia here, such a
Mhm,
hot place. I mean, it still gets cold in Melbourne, but
mhm,
yeah, I feel you. Like it's a different culture. It's a different feeling, isn't it? And even like for me, it's trying to get used to the humor side of things, the conversation,
mm, mm,
understanding the sense
mm,
of humor is something I think I've
mm.
struggled with over here.
Yeah.
We have quite a dry humor, and I
Mm.
wouldn't say Australia does. Why
Yeah.
the move to Hong Kong then?
Well, that's a long story, and it's also one of the paths, right? Leading your own ways, how everything gets connected, and we will get into that later on as well. But of course, for me, as you can say second generation Swedish Chinese, grew up in Sweden, but have Asian heritage. I'm always a bit excited and a bit adventurous to see what's going on in Asia, and so for me, it was a little bit of a seeking. Okay, grew up there, it's cold, it's good, but I want to have a bit of my own, adventure, my own trailblazing road. So that's one of the reasons that led me here. But the fact that it became Hong Kong, that was a bit of a coincidence. So I did not, proactively seek to be in Hong Kong specifically. I was more, I will go to Asia at some point in time for my career and to explore the world in this part of the continent. But how we ended up in Hong Kong, that was a little bit based on coincidence, but also because of the background I had with a Swedish family office that actually sent me here for one of their businesses. So became a good, you can say, landing spot for me, and I've been here for 12 years. So obviously I'm enjoying it. So
Yeah, you are.
still
Yeah.
going strong.
Still going strong, baby. Love it, love it. You're on a bit of a mission. Before we get into your mission and the
Mm,
wonderful things that you're doing,
mm,
and you're a huge entrepreneur over there.
mm, mm,
I've kind of adopted a new start. We'll get into how you're leading your own way for sure, because I'm fascinated
mm,
with it. But on a mental health scale of say
mm,
0 to 10, I've
mm,
adopted this from one of my former guests,
mm,
Gavin Patterson. I really love this question. And obviously we can dissect it till we're blue in the face, really. But
mm,
on a mental health scale, from 0 being rock bottom, 10 being, I suppose, content, where
mm.
would you say you lie on that scale right now?
That's a great question. It's a great question, and I will say like this, because we definitely have different phases of our life and different, I would say even phases of the year, right? So maybe I've been to Melbourne a lot. In Melbourne you have four seasons one day.
Oh, we do, yeah.
So that question could really vary a little bit, but I would say for me at a very deeper level, I would say I'm quite content. I'm a deeper level. I'm quite content. But at the same time, we do face a lot of daily struggles, right? We have daily challenges, and we have new aspiration. Now we're moving into 2026. We have a lot of new projects, both in terms of entrepreneur, in terms of business, and privately as well. So I would say, at a fundamental level, I'm good, but on a daily level, it can fluctuate a little bit.
Of course, yeah.
But what I try to do on that particular scale is to, if I go below that scale, say I'm below 5 on a daily basis, because we're just humans, right? Then I will check myself. To really understand why I am feeling not that good at that particular day. I will check myself. And I think what I've developed a little bit over these couple of years is the ability to be aware of my state when I go below that particular scale, compared to what I know I am at a more fundamental level beyond the daily fluctuations. Then I will check myself, and that checking myself will then help me to recenter myself back to where I should be at a more fundamental level.
Yeah. So Yining, then, where you use 5 as a scale where you begin that check-in point, that reflection, what do you think typically you would feel? Give me a scenario where you think, right, I've crossed a 5. I know you don't consciously think like that in the moment, but where you go, right, okay, I need to check in myself. I'm not feeling great. What would that feel and look like if you could articulate it?
Yes, and 5 is just as an illusion, right? But we use that as an illustration. Anytime I become reactive, anytime I become a bit reactive, anytime I become a bit more stressed about things that maybe is not that big.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe sometimes, we all have our anxiety. Anytime when some anxiety rises up a bit beyond what it probably is the situation should be.
Yeah.
Right. Or frustration, or a little bit stress, all those things, that we are all humans. So when we feel that energy, or that pulsation a bit stronger, that anger, that comes in a little bit, then before it was more difficult for me to be aware of that. I will just become reactive, just, go with the flow. But right now, when I get those type of sensation, when it happens, I'm much more moderate. I'll be able to feel it. And then also I try to ask myself, why am I feeling it? At a more fundamental level. So it's a bit of you can say, of a awareness training, because usually, especially when I was younger, it was impossible for me to have that awareness around that state. Right. So nowadays, a little bit over long years of practice, and also, experiences in life, wherever life takes you, I've become much more aware of those scenarios. So I'll be able to check in with myself. And then when I check in with myself, I understand. And then I will say, let's elevate, which means let's, all these feelings, all these sensations, stress and anxiety is just in this, you can say, current state, or in this 3D world. Let's go beyond that. And look at that from above. Every time I do that, it solves the problem.
Yeah, great answer. When you used the word reactive, would you be reactive to a scenario, to a colleague, to what?
Could be, it could be anything, right? We all have, a lot of obligations throughout the day, and things we need to do, and those kind of things. So it could be we're late to a meeting, or it's traffic.
Yeah, especially in Hong Kong.
Yeah, right. Or overslept, those kind of things. And okay, did I really use my time adequately? All right. And so communication with other people, all right, did I say the right words, or did I become frustrated because of this and that? So I mean, we face these things on a daily basis. Something unexpected happened, right? So we face these things on a daily basis. But then, of course, the key here is to be able to, catch yourself before you actually react to that. And that catching yourself is very difficult. It's very difficult to catch yourself. I will say it took me a long time to become more aware of it, and to build practices and inner clarity around this, so that, I can catch myself, or I'm more able to catch myself now compared to before. But it is not easy. And we face tons of challenges on a daily basis, which, humane, everybody's humane, right? So we do live in a very stressful world. So in that case, it really is important to try to capture yourself. When you do that, lift yourself above and see it from an external point of view, then it really resolves the situation. You're much better to handle that situation. At least that's my experience now compared to before, when I just was acting out of that reactive behavior because of that external stimulus or that situation that caused that reactive behavior.
How would you say you transformed yourself then? Was there something you dramatically that you changed in your life to go from that old person to this, let's say, transformation in Yining?
Well, I would say, I mean, that is a little bit of leading your own way, right? And finding your own purpose and finding
Yeah.
the way that you want to live your own life. So for me, of course, it is an accumulation of a lot of life experiences, both through the period of my first business, from 2019, started business. So we took it public 2021, and I was public CEO for a couple of years. So that was a, very stressful period of time, so that's, of course, a very defining moment in my life. But except for that, it's also throughout the, defining moments of your career, your family. At the same time, you also build a little bit of a stronger inner awareness. And I think that is something that I really spent a lot of time doing throughout these years, to be able to understand yourself, become more aware of the emotions, be able to handle much higher stress load than I was before. And throughout that practice, that built a bit more of an inner resilience, and also a much higher degree of self-awareness. And also through the life situations and challenges, you also gain much more lived experiences. And these lived experiences, added all together, you look at all the situations you have now, doesn't feel that bad.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't feel that bad. So it's definitely a journey, right? A journey of multiple factors, external and internal. And it is really throughout, you can say, the past year or so, in which, I share much more around how I manage the external with the internal. Then that's, the sharing and the wisdom that I'm very glad to share with everybody today. And that's
Please.
a little bit how I live my life, and lead my way today, is to have that inner experience, a very strong inner core, despite all the noise and the fluctuation of the outer world, and be beyond that, right? So it's a little bit of a deeper inner understanding and work to be able to see that from this perspective, and also based on life experiences.
Yeah. So how do you tune out of the outer noise and really tune into the inner noise then?
Yeah, so what I would do is a lot of things, right? A couple of things, but I definitely have my routines. But I always do, always work out in the mornings. I always do my morning meditations, so I've been, doing that for, many years now. And every time I will say I become a bit reactive, or I let things in the outer world, because, I still live in the outer world, right, affect me, I would check myself. In that check myself, then I will try to use different techniques to recenter myself. And that could be micro meditations, or it could be just take a break to do some journaling, just to say, okay, why did I really react in this particular way? Or sometimes when you don't, you're in traffic, or you're going somewhere, you're meeting people, you can't take that time off, then it's just going to be a little bit of a, you can say, a mental switch, right? That you can just create a little bit of awareness in your mind, just think about the situation. And just that little bit of, you can say, 10 seconds of thinking about the situation, and capturing yourself, that can also solve that particular situations, to make you go back to your center. So for me, a lot of this is to ensure that you're always rooted in your own centeredness.
Yeah, I like that. To get to that though, did you have to go through a pivotal point? I mean, it could be a crisis or a big business decision, or what was the context for you? Because I don't feel like we grew up thinking like that. I mean, I certainly didn't. I'm assuming you didn't. You used to be reactive. You play basketball, you're just living in the moment, aren't you? You're in flow state, or the stresses. Well, I wish I had the stresses that I had when I was younger. You know what I mean? But yeah, what was that change in order to go, all right, this is my mindset now. I'm comfortable doing this. I'm human. I'm still going to get it wrong, but I now know how to check in and reframe from going in that direction.
Yeah, I think for me, it's not just one moment, is probably an accumulation of different moments
Yeah.
and a bit of an accumulation of experiences. Of course, when it comes to our career, our business and all these things, there's a lot of things that, you go throughout that journey, right? You have a lot of external stressors. When it comes to family and those kind of situations, you also have a lot of those different types of situations, with
Sure.
kids and all that. So you have that. So for me, it's a little bit like in the process, right? It's like a 6 year or 7 year process. And what I did throughout that 7 year process, more or less, was I actually did daily journaling, more or less every not every day, but quite consistently, because I knew that I had to build that little bit of inner clarity, that inner confidence, inner peace to be able to handle all the external, noise and stressors that I had to face through. And then that just accumulated almost like a snowball effect, ball, and it becomes a compounded effect. And one routine led to another routine. One podcast led to another podcast. One exercise led to another exercise, and those
Yeah.
kind of things. And then you regularly check in and you regularly build your own little, you can say, routines and structures and tools and practices around all of this. And then you also meet a lot of people along the way who maybe shares the same passion or shares the same kind of situation with you. And then you bond with them much more and you learn a bit more from their practices. Right. So a lot of people tuning in here is probably on that process. So I think it is a more of an accumulated process. It's not like one defining moment. Maybe for some it is like that. And it could be to some extent for me as well. But it is still a period of time in which, it has grown and also something that I do on a daily basis. And I continue to see that, this is not perfected yet. So there's still lengths to go.
Yeah. Love it. It's funny you brought up routines because I didn't even ask you about them. And morning routines tends to be a case for every single one of my guests to start off the day. That they've been through whatever they've been through, but it's something that they've really adopted and adapted to on a daily basis. It's something that really did change my life as well. And I like I say, like you said, we are human. I do dip occasionally, but it's a good topic to discuss every time I meet a new guest. But going to how you're leading your own way, you mentioned at the beginning about a business that you had in 2019, and you said I'm not fully in tune with all, but you had an IPO in just 2 years, apparently.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that business and what led you on the journey you're on now.
Yeah. That was, I would say my first entrepreneurial journey and also a little bit leading your way. And I think that could also tie back a little bit to where I am right now. So, I think for a lot of us, growing up and we want to achieve things, we want to become successful and all these things. And for me, it was, a very ambitious young person and living in Sweden, I felt like I had a lot of opportunities and, the world is a full of opportunities and a playground so for you to really express yourself. So what is the best way of me expressing myself? Right, of course you can stay in a job and that's totally fine, that's very good, but for me, at a certain point in time of my career, I felt I needed to take myself outside of that particular situation or I want to explore something a bit more exotic at that time, which is entrepreneurship, right? and but that was many years ago, so I was quite young and maybe a little bit naive and all those kind of things. And if you look at the stats, 99% or 98% of all companies that are started close in 2 years, so you definitely have the odds against you, right? And that was the time before AI, before all these new technologies that enables a total different type of environment for founders and those kind of things. So, but I left, a little bit of a very comfortable situation to pursue my dreams. At that time, it was really to help Nordic investors access here in Asia, because I'm a little bit the bridge between the Nordic to here, right? And focus on finance, which has been my, you can say, my foundation of my career. So we did that, and I used to work for a listed investment company that is quite big in Sweden. It's private now. So I knew knows a little bit of the ins and out of that, how to run a, do a IPO, how to run a listed investment company and those kind of things. So I did my own journey
Yeah.
throughout the 6 years period, and it was crazy. In 2 years we started the company, and then we listed it. I was like, still remember the day when we got the invite to, you say, you have now been invited to the opening ceremony, the bell ringing ceremony on the 12th of December. I still felt that was not real. Like at that time, it did not feel real for me because it was such a, hectic period. We had to have so many things to come in place. It was prospectors, anchor investors, media, all that stuff. So it was a really, really hectic and very intense period. And I was a founder and CEO, so I had to really lead the charge. So it felt a little bit unreal when we got that invitation. Okay, it's a bell ringing ceremony. I had to, pinch myself a couple of times to see if that email was real or if I was just dreaming. I was under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure at that time to do that. But that was that, and then after that, for me, that was one process. And now that company has merged with another listed investment company. So I have, you can say, completed the first entrepreneurial journey from A to Z. So now I'm on the next journey. But given the fact that I've done this, done a lot in that particular field before, the next journey for me is totally different, right? And I see what I pursued before with a different lens. Right, that was a little bit when I was still a bit more captivated in this 3D world. Whilst right now, I'm still in this 3D world. I'm still enjoying it. It's totally fine. I still have a new business and all that stuff. So keep going, but not really driven by the same motives. Not really driven by the same kind of pressure that I was before when I.
What were your motives then? Sorry to cut you off. What was your motives then?
Well, of course, you wanted to achieve, acquire a lot of things, right? When you started off, whatever that means for everybody. But you want to achieve a lot of external validation in some sort of ways, and those things for yourself and maybe for other people as well. But those things that we watch in media, when an entrepreneur becomes really successful and those kind of stuff. So, but that's that was that was that, and that was then.
So with the business that when you did the ceremony and you got that email, just paint the picture for the viewers of where did your business align in terms of scale, or what did it look like in terms of size, employees, and how did it look like? What do you have to do in order to get that email? If somebody else was going to open a business, how would that look? Just taking a very quick break to thank our sponsor, Eshu Skincare. If you haven't heard of them, Eshu Skincare started right here in Australia, using Australian ingredients to make skincare straightforward and accessible, especially for men who want results without the fuss. Their journey took them all the way to the US, where they were featured in Macy's and over 300 stores. Now they're back with a fresh approach, focusing on healthy skin and authenticity for everyone. I'm proud to have Eshu Skincare as a sponsor on Leading Our Own Way. See the show notes for their website and to see how you can keep your skin healthy and confident. And if you're interested in sponsoring like Eshu Skincare, drop us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Now, right back to the episode.
Yeah. I mean, for us, it's we listed a company in Sweden, right? So it's not the Nasdaq or something like that. That's super big, but it's still a quite big of a process. In our IPO prospectus, we raised 200 million SEK. Right, so you'll have to translate it to whatever currency it is, and so forth. So we had a couple of thousand shareholders, right? In the company, right? It's still an investment company, so number of employees is a handful, around 8, I think, at that time. So it was it's not a huge company in those kind of sense in terms of how it is, but still significant from most businesses, and media and all that stuff, and governance and all that stuff. So it was an interesting phase, and a very important and very defining phase of my life and my chapter.
Yeah, nice. So what are your motives now then?
Right now, I think just a couple, right? First of all, I think going through that particular journey, right? I was, you definitely learn a lot, right? In terms of both how to handle the external world, in terms of business entrepreneurship, that's one part, right? Everything from A to Z, right? From hiring to scaling to all these things that I think, yeah, a lot of people are very skilled at if you are an entrepreneur. But you know that being an entrepreneur, and this is a good analogy which I share with, a lot of people who are beginning their own journey. It's a little bit like going to the gym. Why do I
Yeah.
say that? Is because being an entrepreneur, you need to go to the gym and you need to practice different areas of your body. Right, if it's your abs, if it's your biceps, your triceps, your back, your bench, upper chest, incline chest, all that things. So being an entrepreneur is almost similar because you need to learn legal, you need to learn hiring, you need to learn sales, you need to do pitching, you need to learn leadership. So all those different areas, so you become really full-fledged as an entrepreneur. So for me right now, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is to help and empower a new generation of entrepreneurs. Right. All these things that I learned throughout this, 6, 7 years of period of being an entrepreneur, I really want to share that with the world. That's one of the things. And then on the second of all is not only on the tools, on the practical side, how does this affect you within the inner world? Right. I think a lot of people who talk about entrepreneurship really focus on the tools, the external world, but not
Yeah.
enough. Okay, how do you handle it from your internal perspective? Right. All these challenges, the you can say conflicting priorities or beliefs, and how do you really navigate and find certainty beyond that logic? Right. So for me, it's really about sharing everything I learned as much as possible to the new generation of entrepreneurs in terms of the skill sets, but also trying to help them, and mentor them when it comes to the inner process of being an entrepreneur. And I think that part is probably even more powerful because right now in 2026, I think there's just too many good opportunities out there, and just too many tools that have changed the landscape for entrepreneurs that was not here some years ago. So the question is really not about how, it's about why, but that why needs to be found from within.
Great. Yeah. And we're going to get, well, we will, that, I mean, that's the final question of the episode is your why, your purpose. So I won't ask that there. It's probably fitting to ask now, but we'll leave that for the end. What type of people do come to you then for your expertise?
Yeah. Well, right now, I think for myself, it's really people who are interested in becoming, an entrepreneur, right? So, or people who are in business but needs to have a little bit of, mentorship, support. But at the same time, I do develop my own business as well. So I'm still a second generation entrepreneur, but I try to help and share as much as possible for me to younger entrepreneurs who are maybe a bit more in the beginning of their process. And then I build my own businesses. And for the people, that I work with, all the people that I work with, I try to share a little bit of those insights and those experiences to everybody I meet actually
Yeah.
along the way. But mainly I would say younger versions of myself who are a bit more in the starting phase of their own entrepreneurial journey, or people that I work with that I see that there's a lot of potential for them to, to take their inner and outer game to the next level. So, yeah, so that's a bit of the people, I try to help and empower going forward.
Do you see a lot of yourself in them and making those, same mistakes that you did when you were younger? Do you see a lot of those
Yeah.
patterns?
Yeah, of course, of course, of
Yeah.
course. I mean, that's why it is always good. Some things when it comes to experience and you've gone through this walked the entire path yourself. You definitely know a little bit where are the pitfalls, right? Because you walked that road, right? You have that experience. So therefore, the person who can be extremely talented. Now we see a lot of very talented people equipped with all these skills. They're extremely talented. All right, they have a lot of opportunities, better platforms, but they haven't really walked the entire way. So therefore, you can definitely see some, patterns of that they lack certain experiences, right?
Yeah.
And some of that mentoring and some of that insight. And for me as well, I still also learn a lot from them because it also gives me some awareness around, okay, maybe this is an area I didn't think about before. Right. So it challenged me, but definitely there's a there's a lot of the experiences that I have accumulated, insight I've accumulated now that I know could be very valuable for them along their journey, depending on where they are. Right. But that takes time to build, and it doesn't happen unless you really have that experience, and also to communicate that to the person so they really see it, and they know. So it means that you really have to have walked it, and when you share some of that insight that is really to the point, then they will see and they will understand, and hopefully that could be of help for them.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's great. I mean, it's great leadership, isn't it, to be able to take pieces from the ones that, who are younger than you, and something that they might think about that you've never thought about, that you can adopt and put it into your workforce or your repertoire, let's say. You're obviously very business minded. You're doing a few different things at the moment. You're currently, I remember you saying you're a partner with, I'm assuming I'm allowed to, because I wrote it down, say the name of you're a partner with Sincere Alignment Group. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So so I have that, and then also I do some coaching on the side, which is the mentorship part, right?
Yeah.
And I will say, after the first entrepreneur journey, my goal with the second business is, of course, I'm still young, and I do see a lot of opportunities ahead, but at the same time, my purpose of that is slightly different compared to before. So it's to share, but also when it comes to Sincere Alignment Group, it's really to, connect the ecosystem, right? So we have a lot of entrepreneurs and businesses that are slightly in different silos. If you look into the tech world, you look at the brands, look at the creator economy, and also investors, they are all a little bit in different silos, and therefore, it's and there's also the technology shift is going so fast right now that there's creating a greater and greater generation gap between those who are super experienced but maybe not as agile, not as ability to adopt all the latest tools, versus those who might not have that much experience but they adopt the latest tools, then they can move very fast. But what we are trying to do is to converge that, right? So it is a little bit learning from the people who has experiences, but also at the same time learning from those people who knows the latest tools and combine that. And I think in the future, when it comes to business, we will move towards a more decentralized economy, right? But that is more like business talk.
Yeah. I don't know what you mean by that.
And that means that I think before a lot of us, we were employees, we worked, but now in the future, there will be a new wave of entrepreneurs, and because of the cost of starting a new business is so low now compared to before, and you have these amazing tools and also global distribution from wherever you are, then in the future, when our kids grow up, the amount of entrepreneurs versus employee, that ratio is going to change, and it will change quite dramatically. So therefore, in terms of business and things like that, I think my group is to support and drive that change towards a more decentralized economy in which everybody, no matter your background, your education, and all these things, will have more equal opportunities to become really successful as an entrepreneur, because information, knowledge, capital is going to be much more abundant in the future compared to it was before. Before it was a bit scarce. There was a bit of a hierarchy, right? You had to go to the best schools to get to, access to capital and those kind of things. You had to get to the best school to get access to the best education. Nowadays, this knowledge and capital is more ubiquitous, right? You can learn anything on YouTube, more or less. So that's something I'm quite passionate about, and hope for us right now in this new business to create and empower a new generation of entrepreneurs, so that we can build a better future for our children. So that's
that's the dream, right?
Part of the process.
Yeah, I'm guessing AI is taking a big role on all of those points you just mentioned.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is what we see quite clearly right now is, this technology shift, we're talking about business, is so radical, is so transformative, that, it's, I think even for me, sometimes it can feel a bit scary, right? Wow, what is going on, right? Compared to where we were just a year or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But we have to adopt, we have to have, we have to understand that in the future, we will have robots. That's not going to change. It's not going to change. That trend is not going to change. But we have to understand it from a maybe, more holistic perspective, and also to embrace it. Because if you have a great experience in business and you know how to use the latest AI tools, then you become much more powerful. You amplify your experience by a couple folds. But you have to be open-minded, you have to be adaptive, and you have to be curious about what you can do with it. If you are a little bit close-minded, then then somebody else is going to learn this. And the gap in productivity is just huge compared to one person with the same experience, same age, with AI versus excluding AI. Right. So that productivity gap is just too big. So we just have to embrace it, learn it, have an open mind around it, be curious about that, and see if, given these wonderful tools, how can I create more or create better within my workspace or within whatever the things you and I do.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you're creating some businesses within the
Yes.
AI space, right?
Yes. Yes.
Can you tell us
Yes.
a
We're
bit
doing that.
about that?
Yes, yeah, of course. I mean, within Sincere Alignment Group, the shift towards decentralized economy, one of the key part of that is, of course, technology, right? How to adopt technology in the best way. So when it comes to, one of our core features, is really to look at the B2B workflow from A to Z. B2B workflow from A to Z, and how can we use different AI tools across different parts of that process to generate a more, efficient and more optimized outputs. Uh, so so that is that's something actually we do, and we have a team developing our own software for that. So it's but that's
Wow.
like yeah, that's I'm really into AI now.
Oh yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
but it's really fun. But we really focus, when we talk about business, we really focus on the B2B space. Really focus on a B2B space, really focus on SMEs, and also some, larger corporates with local branches and those kind of things. Because we know that into the B2B environment right now, you have to adopt these latest technologies, but the barriers to adopt these latest technology is more difficult because you have security settings. Right, you need to think about your security, your data security, say data privacy.
Oh,
Right,
don't even get me
you cannot
started.
be, yeah, yeah, I mean, you cannot just use all these very advanced cloud solutions because there's no security. You don't know where your files are uploaded to, right? And yeah, and in the corporate world, a lot of our information is very sensitive. When I was in my first business, as confidential information was public, it's sensitive. Some of that is so even called insider information, right? Right, so we have a lot of sensitive information. That kind of information we cannot, just use average tools that is maybe not have that type of information sensitivity, right? So we really need to find tools and solutions that can both be very productive, similar to those, applications for the broader consumer use, but also cater it to ensure its adherence and secure in the B2B space. And in the B2B space, it needs to be scalable for an organization, right? So there are certain requirements, especially in terms of security and also professional usage within how an organization is set up, that we need to make sure these tools can adhere to. So it's customized for a larger organization with different roles and different departments and different regions that does things slightly different. So, so one part of our business right now in terms of Sincere Group is to really see how can we leverage the latest tools and make it more accessible and localized, customized for B2B users.
Fascinating. And is that business is that in Hong Kong or is that based back in Sweden?
Yeah, so this is a thing that I think also as a second generation or a second phase entrepreneur and those kind of things is that we think global.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is in the past maybe we would think, okay, all right, let me start a business in Hong Kong. We address the Hong Kong market, or let's start a business in Sweden and those kind of things. For now, it's like it really doesn't matter where I am based, and it
Sure.
doesn't really matter where our development team is based. We have global markets and global production sources.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Right, you have to think like that, and also, for all the distribution and leading your way in, and it's a global audience, right? So we do global businesses, where I am located, where my co-founder is located. In the grand scheme of things, it does not matter as much.
Yeah.
Of course, you have some
Yeah.
physical travel, things you have to do, so you cannot be everywhere at the same time. But right now, location, it really does not matter for the business.
Sure.
It's more, maybe some legal jurisdictions in that particular part that you need to adhere to. But most of the businesses today should be global. Should think global and have global customer base, and global production forces. That's also very important to ensure that you can get the best competences. That does not matter where they are located.
Yeah, I completely agree, because that's how I think about the podcast. To be fair, I'm English, and I'm based. Obviously, everyone knows I live in Australia, but I look at the podcast as a global global podcast. Yeah, so I'm just transferring that mindset to the podcast, I suppose. But yeah, I do think like that. I try and think about the American market and the timings. Everyone keeps telling me, think about your timings when you post. And so, well, no, because I can't, because then wherever I post, I'm going to be messing up with that country and that country, and so I just try and find that middle ground so everyone can just tune in. Probably a different approach to you completely, but there you go. I'd love to dig into where all this really came from for you. And go to that, that root cause of the mindset and where you led. And obviously that probably makes sense if we go to your childhood. But before we do, is there anything else there that we've left off that you would consider, is there anything that we've missed in terms of how you are leading your own way?
Yeah, I think, if we still continue on a little bit on the entrepreneurial journey and the business
Please.
side, and then we move on to that. I think what is super important for everyone is you understand, right, that this is a totally different era. It's a totally different era compared to before, and the rate of change is only going to accelerate. Now, the most important thing is to, understand it a little bit from an internal perspective, and then overcome those anxieties, those doubt, and then embrace it.
Yeah.
In Chinese, we have something called 危机. 危机 is is a threat, right? Or like but in if you look into the words 危机, it is actually two words. One is a threat or a danger, and the second one is opportunity. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, for everybody listening here or doing your business, you're a line manager, right? In all big shifts, big changes, find the opportunity within the danger. Yeah, and overcome those fears so you can really embrace it. Because to be honest, it has never been a better time for people to create your own business, or if you are in a business, to create a new product, new segment, and really expand and challenge some of those old perspectives thinking. Local business, no. I only source from Australia, no. All these paradigms is going to change. This change, right? When you see that, you will transform. You'll be able to move forward and be more aggressive, be more certain, right? Overcome, just like we said in the beginning, around reactive behaviors, about stressors. Overcome those fears. Try to understand where it really are within yourself. Why do you feel that way? Why do you not make decisions with certainty? Why do you have that little bit of, you can say, doubts? Where does that doubt come from? Overcome them, and then move ahead with greater clarity and certainty to take advantage of a new era that is being built right now.
Do you think people are living in fear as it is? Well, there's the end of part 1. If this part reminds you of us of anything, I think it's this. Growth doesn't start with the business plan. It starts with honesty. The kind of honesty where you pause, you check in, and you ask, am I building a life that actually feels like mine? Yining's journey from sport to study to stepping into bigger arenas shows that, we talk about, this is what we talk about, leading our own way. You don't need to have it all figured out, but you do need the courage to keep moving, one aligned step at a time. Take a moment after this and reflect. Where in your life are you chasing success, but avoiding clarity? Because clarity changes everything. And in part 2, we go even deeper. Come back Wednesday. If you're alive, if you're not, it's already there waiting for you. Please follow the show and help us push to more people. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you soon. Join us tomorrow to hear more from today's incredible guests and learn valuable insights to help you lead your own way. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then.